The big item system-wide, obviously, is budget. You're going to begin to see a great deal regarding the CMS budget over the next months all the way into the summertime. So I just was kind of going to give you a general idea of what's going on with the CMS budget. The first thing is to be very aware that it's not a CMS issue. This is a national issue. You know, I know we have people from California, and they're in the worst shape of all right now in regard to the budget. But the state of North Carolina is in a $3.7 billion deficit right now. And obviously what that does is tighten the purse strings in regard to where money is going to go from the state level, which the majority of our funding comes from state and local monies. So that is a constraint on us. Plus the local government is obviously reducing the amount of money that's going to education. So that has really created a problem for the public schools in North Carolina. So the state has told us to create budgets on a 5% cut, 10% cut, and a 15% cut. And they don't know exactly what it's going to look like. The governor doesn't send out her budget, I don't believe, until the end of this month, early February. I think the House and the Senate in North Carolina are deciding whether they're going to do it together and do a joint budget for the first time in a while, or try to get it out before the governor. There's a little politics going on between that, if they're trying to circumvent the governor and get their budget out first. And usually the governor creates their budget, and then the state and local, the state House and Senate will create theirs based upon that. They'll basically take the governor's and kind of carve it up and create what they want it to be. But there's some politics going on in regard to that. But basically what that means for a school system is, at the minimum, if we have a 5% cut as a school system, you're talking around $77 million we're going to get cut again this year as a school system. If we go up to 15%, I actually wrote down the number so I had it, it could go up to as much as $170 million out of our budget in cuts. So obviously what you're reading about in the paper, or what you're going to begin to read about in the paper, is teacher cuts again, and other reductions. Transportation comes up rather regularly. How are magnets going to continue to stay on as they are in our system? Teacher assistants now at the state and local level are up for recommendation to be reduced in the new formula. So there's just a lot of different things that are up there. Other items, middle school sports has been recommended again to be, even though it's already cut by CMS and it was parent funded and also corporate funded, they're talking about taking those corporate funds out of the middle school and putting everything in high schools. So middle school sports would again disappear, even though it was taken out last year. It was being funded by outside sources. So middle school sports is a recommendation. It hasn't been approved. I mentioned staff reductions. Principals eliminating one staff member at their school. It's in certain positions based on their individual needs at that school. Positions that principals could cut at this point that they've told us are media teachers, guidance counselor, literacy facilitators, and we would have to choose the one we thought was best. In reality, none of those are good choices, obviously. So that is something that's pending, that's up for approval by the board. And then also an increase in class size. Can be a 1 or 2 student increase in class size, which doesn't seem like a lot, and it would only be in grades 4 through 12, but it is when you're getting as high as we are in some of our classes. Upwards of 27, 28 in 4th and 5th grade in some cases. So, you know, those are all things that are pending. Another thing that's on the counter, and I actually put it in the Hawkeye last week, was school start time. They are, again, recommending changes in our school start times, which will save $4 million in transportation. That's the rationale behind it. So,
what's that transportation doing? Are they combining?
It's because of routes. No, you wouldn't ride buses with other kids, I don't think.
You would not ride with middle school kids or high school
Not
kids?
to my understanding.
In a 20-minute time span, 6 buses go by my house.
And that came in I was in the paper too, but no, because high school gets out at 2:15. We would get out at 2:45, and I'm not sure when middle school gets out. 3 something. So it's still staggered. So to my understanding at this point,
we wouldn't be riding with
you
older
shouldn't
children.
be. No.
We wouldn't. My kindergartner's not going to be riding with us.
To my understanding, no.
No, so he won't be bowling them.
Yeah. Question?
Would they be buying them with Cornelius or something like
They haven't got into it. I doubt that seriously. I think they're just trying to reduce the amount of routes, and I don't know exactly how. They didn't really tell us. All we know is that the bottom line as a principal is that this decision is being made to save approximately $4 million in transportation. And he said this probably would have been done whether the budget was an issue or not. Some people will love that at our school because I get pretty regularly, school starts too early. So, but other people won't. It'll move our schedule. It'll change it an hour, basically. We'll come to school about 15 minutes later. So if I estimate when I think school will start, instead of students being able to come at 7 o'clock, students will be able to come at 7:15. Yeah, 7:15 they could come. 7:45 our day would begin, and then we would go to 2:45 versus 1:45 right now. So it's about an hour difference overall for us. Some schools are going as late as almost 5 o'clock. If you're in a magnet school, you start at 9 something. I think their end time is 4:45. But that's not all. This is some. Yes, Miss.
So do you think most likely that's where we're headed?
I believe that's going to go through, without question.
Or without question?
I mean, I don't know anybody,
Right.
but I think that will be one of the ones that the board will approve without even really thinking about it. Knowing that there's a $4 million cost saving out of it, and it's extending the school day 45 minutes.
Is that good or bad?
I think it's a good thing. It would be better if teachers were getting paid for that extra 45 minutes, but we're really not. So what it does is really bring us to the same time as middle and high schools. We have the lowest school day, the shortest school day in the state of North Carolina, 6 hours and 15 minutes. So it's always been the talk, and I even think I've talked about it in these meetings before, that I thought it was inevitable that this was going to eventually happen. Now, how it was going to happen, I didn't know. But adding 45 minutes to the day, we don't know exactly. One, it's going to give teachers more time to get things accomplished. Two, hopefully they're going to give us some flexibility in regard to how I can use that time. I can use it for relooping. I can use it for extension. Hopefully they're going to give us school flexibility to decide how we want to use that. We don't know that yet, but we do know that it will add 45 minutes to our school day. Hopefully it'll help the ability to have more kids go to specials on a daily basis, because it would add another block for specials. So there are some pros. Now, as a kindergarten parent, an extra 45 minutes for a kindergarten parent may be pushing the envelope. It really may, especially early on. But basically what it does is take us to 7 hours, which is the same as our middle and high schools. The big thing to me, and I think if you were to talk to a teacher, is going to be, you just added another hour to my day, and my salary is not changing at all. So that's always the thing that sticks in someone's craw. That's kind of the budget stuff right now. If you do have questions or you have feedback, I put it in the Hawkeye, but it's called budgetquestions@cms.k12.nc.us. Budget questions is one word. There's also, if you go to the CMS webpage, I think they have a section where you can go on and look at the rumor mill, and they respond to the rumors and try to explain and clarify things. The board will be meeting regularly, starting to talk about these. Again, right now, all that has happened is Dr. Gorman has come out and recommended a series of cuts that he does not really like. But it's kind of like, what options do we have is where we're at right now. So now the board will have to take those recommendations, and they begin a system of basically negotiating how this is going to pan out. What they leave on the table, what they take off the table. It'll also be designed in tiers. So basically it'll be set up probably in 4 tiers, and if money somehow magically becomes available where we don't have to cut as much as they believe, they will start in tier 4 and re-add things as we go. So if you don't have to cut $40 million, the things in tier 4 may be able to come back. It just depends on how much the state and local government tell us, because they have not worked on their budgets at all. We are very much ahead of the curve in regard to getting this process started, because we want to make sure we're prepared and to give parents as much preparation as possible. Budget questions. Anything I can answer, clarify? I don't know much, but I can try to help the best I can. I want to just be a resource. And if, as you read the paper and you want to ask questions to me, you don't feel like sending it to the CMS questions site is going to benefit you at all, let me know, and I will communicate with the higher ups in CMS and try to get you the answers you're asking about, to try to get you some clarity, because we are just kind of learning as we go. Again, the key thing to remember is right now they're recommendations. They're not good. The other one I didn't I didn't expound upon was the TAs, teacher assistants. The state is looking at cutting them as well, but CMS has already included it in their packet of cuts recommendations. And what that will mean is right now I have 13 teacher assistants that work in my classrooms throughout the building. I have groups that work in K1, groups that work in 2, and then during planning times they go up to 3, 4, and 5. And they work with kids in a variety of different ways. The way that will look is it will no longer be K2 for assistants, it'll shrink just to kindergarten, and it'll be on a 1 to 31 formula, meaning that you'll get one assistant for every 31 kids. Well, when you figure that out, I based it upon 180 students in kindergarten. That's just an estimate. That means we would get about 5.8 assistants, so we would probably end up with 6 assistants versus 13. So obviously that is going to be a cut at our school level, and I think that one is probably going to happen too. Because if it doesn't get approved by the board, I think the state's going to do it anyway. At least that's the word we hear on the street. So the school start time and the assistants probably are going to happen. That will be my gut instinct at this point. But so those were the kind of the big budget things. Any questions about that?
So with
Yeah.
the assistants, that would mean that the 6, if it was going to be 6 for the school, it would be strictly only kindergarten only. They would not help with any other
No,
grades?
that's a good question. The formula is based on, she asked the question, if the formula is based on 1 to 31 in kindergarten, does that mean those assistants are only going to be in kindergarten? The answer is going to be no. I will use those assistants throughout our building. How it'll work, I'm not sure. And what it'll look like, I mean, one thing that pops into my head immediately, and I don't know if it's even feasible, would be to block time at every grade level where you would have all of your assistants going into one grade level at a time, almost like a blitz. And that way during X time, they would have everybody. Then the next block of time, they would go to first grade, second grade. I don't know if that's feasible. You have to play with the times and everything, but that's one idea. But it's definitely not going to be just kindergarten. The other major obstacle as a principal, again, going quickly off the top of your head trying to think about it, is morning arrival time and afternoon dismissal time. You know, we have staff littered throughout our building and helping out doing cars and in the afternoon loading vehicles and you name it, people calling in numbers. And it's basically to make sure we have safety. We have people in every hallway. That obviously is going to have to be totally revamped in how we attack that. So I'm going to have to create schedules to make sure certain groups of people are available to be on duty. So for instance, if I set the schedule where special area teachers won't have a class first thing in the morning and make sure that there's like, and again, I'm just kind of talking hypothetically, I could create a 45-minute block of time in the morning and say all classes should be doing literacy at this time or something like that. Specials are going to start at 8:15 or whatever. That way I would have all my special area teachers that I could put throughout the building on duties or something of that nature. I will have to use the people I have to go on duties rather than do other things.
Are you concerned at all with the EC kids?
EC is a little bit of a different animal because they come out of a different funding source. So in regard to EC, the EC teachers will stay the same because it comes out of a different funding source, and my EC assistant will stay because it comes out of that same funding source. So that's what I consider my 14th assistant. So that position that's kind of safeguarded. So that money's different.